It's the CalebDMTG Show.
Section 3. Black. The black cards. I fucking love black. My favorite color in Magic. Love sacrificing shit. Blood in the Snow, 4 black for a snow sorcery. Choose one, destroy all creatures, destroy all planeswalkers. Then, return a creature or planeswalker card with converted mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of snow spent to cast the spell. So in Limited, this card's going to be good whether you have snow mana or not. Just playing a sweeper in Limited is gonna surprise some opponents. You're very rarely going to be destroying all planeswalkers. If you destroy a planeswalker, it's because your opponent has like a planeswalker, and you're using this as a 1-for-1 removal spell, and that's still good. In Constructed, 6 mana sweeper is a lot, but it's not just good against aggro. It's also good against control decks, because you can pop their planeswalkers while you're recurring one of your things. Some nice value. It's not a card you're going to play 4 of, right? You can't justify 4 of a 6 mana sweeper. But I think like 1 or 2 of this, if you're playing the snow anyway, totally worth it, totally good. I also think the art is awesome. Really fits like the raw brutality of some of the like the Norse sagas. Yeah, great stuff. Can you return a creature that this kills? You certainly can. If it targeted, you would have to choose the target when you played the spell, and then it wouldn't work that way. But it says return a creature. So if you play this as destroy all creatures, the way cards resolve is top down, so all the creatures have been destroyed before you return a creature. You're comparing it to Finality? Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. Finality, you could also like play for 2 mana to rebuy 2 things, so it's a little bit more versatile in how you cast it. But this is also a more powerful card. You're doing more than -4/-4 by destroying all creatures. And returning a card from your graveyard is better than keeping 1 creature in play. You're gonna get like a slightly better card on average. How good do I think Snow will be in draft? I think Snow's going to be good in draft, for sure. For sure. I've been comparing it to Modern Horizons Limited through most of this review, where I think you'll get like 2 Snow drafters per draft. And if 3 people try and go Snow, then everyone's deck is going to be bad. And if only 1 person is going Snow, then the deck's going to be nutty. But 2 people's the perfect number, probably. You're worried that there's too much snow support and not enough lands? Well, the way it works out, like, not all of the cards need to have, like, a gob of snow lands. Some of them really reward you for having a pile of snow lands, but some of them are just fine, right? So the snow creatures are totally fine, even if you don't have a ton of snow mana in your deck. Like, Pilfering Hawk is still a flyer, or the Hill Giant is fine. They're just less exciting. Alright, Bloodsky Berserker. 1 and a black for a 1/1 creature human berserker. Geronimo, if I answered questions like that, I would never get through the review. I appreciate your enthusiasm though. If you can wait until after the review, if you can save questions like that, or maybe even the end of the stream, then I can take time to answer folks all at once, but yeah. Anyway, Bloodsky Berserker, 1 in the black creature, human berserker. Whenever you cast your 2nd spell each turn, Put 2/1/1 counters on Berserker. It gains Menace until end of turn. Yeah, 2 mana as a 1/1 starting off is not an amazing rate. If your deck is aggressive enough, it's not super hard to play 2 spells on turn 3. And then you have a 3/3 with Menace. That's worth. That's certainly worth. The Foretell mechanic makes it a little bit easier to fit 2 spells into a turn, because a lot of the Foretell cards like would cost 3 mana normally, or you can foretell them for 2, and then on a future turn flip them over for like 1 mana, you know, and cast them for 1 mana. That isn't happening on turn 3, obviously. If you're like playing this on turn 2, then there isn't a spot to foretell, but even if you don't trigger this until turn 4, it's still probably fine. You're not doing very much for those several turns where it's like waiting. But if you just trigger it once to get a 3/3 with Menace, then that's probably fine to have like a little bit of suspend involved, to have a little bit of waiting involved. And then if you ever trigger it multiple times in a game, then you have a 5/5 with Menace. Could start to get pretty nutty. So it's a build around, so like a high variance card that doesn't fit into every deck, but it could be real good. You cannot EOT. You cannot cast a Foretell card the same turn that you play it face down. It says to flip it up on a future turn, cast it on a later turn for its Foretell cost. So you can, if it's an instant, you can play it on the opponent's turn, but you can't just like Foretell it and then flip it over immediately. Which matters for like, say, Saw It Coming. Has a Foretell cost that only uses 1 blue. So if you drew Saw It Coming and you only had 1 blue and you attacked, then you wouldn't be able, and your opponent played a removal spell or something mid-combat, you wouldn't be able to Foretell and then flip it over on your turn. You wouldn't be able to do both. Next card, Burning Rune Demon. 4 black, creature, demon, berserker, flying. When there's the battlefield, you may search your library for exactly 2 cards, not named Burning Rune Demon, that have different names. If you do, reveal those cards. An opponent chooses one. Put the chosen card in your hand, the other in your graveyard. And shuffle. Yeah, 6 mana for a 6/6 flyer is obviously nutty and limited. We don't have to talk about that. In Constructed, it's a little hard to justify. This might be one of those EDH playables. Putting a card to hand, putting 1 of 2 cards to hand, is quite good. Like getting the second best card in your deck into your hand. Wasn't there a 7 mana demon that just tutored? That just straight up tutored? I feel like that card saw like marginal play. And I think it saw play because there was that stupid enchantment. The 1 in a black enchantment that made all of your creatures cost 2 less. I think that was the only deck I saw it in, but it was fun even there. Yeah, Runescar Demon. You think this card's a draw 2 with good escape cards? I don't think that matters. I still think like a 6 mana, even a 6 mana 6/6 that's like giving you some value. I wonder how much that matters. Fantastic with Unburial Rites. Yeah, I mean, does that mean so? It's exciting for Cube? Is that where we're excited to play this card? I'd play this card in Cube, but I don't know if I would play this card in Standard. Definite EDH card. Yeah. Yeah, saying I'm excited for Cube is very similar to saying excited for EDH. Crippling Fear, 2 black sorcery. Choose a creature type. Creatures that aren't of the chosen type get -3/-3 until end of turn. Also, it's an inverse Witch's Vengeance. I like it. We can murder the opponent's tribe when you're doing tribal. Not very good in the mirror. Not very good in the mirror. Is this card nutty in rogues? That's the one place in standard that it would just slot in, right? For your elf decks. Oh yeah, elves is like a green-black deck in this set. Doesn't it changelings? Yeah, I don't know how many changelings are gonna be in standard though. Like, there's definitely some rare ones that seem interesting, but I don't know if they're actually gonna make it in. You think you could be really good in rogues? Yeah, that's where my mind first went. And then it could be like a sideboard card for other strategies. There's probably a sideboard card in rogues too, but like I could see them main decking one or something. Anyway. Card's super cool. Deathnell Berserker, 1 in a black. Creature Elf Berserker. When Deathnell Berserker dies, if its power was 3 or greater, get a 2/2 Black Sonic Berserker creature token. Interesting. So it can give you value, but only if you grow it a little bit. Only if you give it a little bit of love. In an equipment set, it's not hard. And then the tribes are relevant. Maybe you can anthem it somehow. Demonic Gifts, 1 in a black instant. Until end of turn, target creature gets +2/+0 and gains. When this creature dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Yeah, we've seen this before. Maybe not this exact card, maybe not the same name, but this effect. It's a useful one. It's a cool one to have. This sort of effect doesn't usually make the cut for me, because I would usually just like rather have another creature than have like a situational thing, but it's not that situational. If your creatures aren't dying ever in a game of limited, then you probably already won, right? But you don't want too much of this stuff. You want to make sure that you actually do have threats to play. So have a hand full of tricks. Dogged Pursuit, 3 in a black enchantment. At the end of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This card was like weirdly good when it was ill-gotten something. That card drained for 1 on your upkeep though. Inheritance, that's the one. That card drained on your upkeep though, and it was a format where that turned on speculate. And this is not a speculate format. So if it's the format worse, that one could also like sack to drain too. It wasn't crazy to actually just like kill someone by stacking inheritances. Yeah, the burst ability where you like sack to drain for 4. This card doesn't have that. So Inheritance was like weirdly good, and I don't think Dogged Pursuit is weirdly good. I don't think it's good. You'd have to have like a really slow game before it paid off. It hits the turn you cast it. Oh, that's a good thing to point out. Yeah, I didn't mention that. I wasn't factoring that. You get 1 more drain out of it than you would with Inheritance. Being able to sack Inheritance to drain for 4 is better, and like turning on the format's mechanic is better, but you're right, this does get 1 more drain. Spectacle, sorry, not Speculate. That was close. Y'all know what I meant, hopefully. Spectacle, not Speculate. Spec something or other. Alright, next card. Draugr, Necromancer, 3 in a black snow creature, zombie cleric. Ooh, 4 mana for a 4/4. Snow rare, I'm excited already. It's a sick-ass old man with an axe. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile that card with an ice counter instead. You may cast spells from among cards in exile your opponent's own with ice counters on them, and you may spend mana from snow sources, as though they were mana of any color, to cast those spells. Okay, cool. So you need to have some snow mana in your deck if you want to cast your opponent's stuff. But, I mean, that fits, right? That fits with your snow creature. This card's sweet as shit. I finally shuffled these orcs enough that I split a perfect fit. Takes a while. Standard Kalitas? Yeah. I mean, it's not as good as Kalitas is. But that's a good comparison. It's kind of like somewhere in between Kalitas and Gonti. Which maybe like closer to Kalitas. Good black control card. Yeah, it's certainly not bad. Oh, you're saying it works with multiples in that if they kill this one and you draw another one, then because those cards are still exiled with ice counters on them, you can still play them. Or if you played your own sweeper, right? Like, it works with the snow sweeper that we looked at earlier. Well, you have Draugr Necromancer in play, and then you play Blood on the Snow and destroy all creatures, and use Blood on the Snow to rebuy the Necromancer. Because it says, like... Because it exiles it with ice counters, instead of having, like, a wonkier exile effect. Then it'll still work. That is a good point. That is a good thing to point out. Sweet. Alright, next card. Draugr Recruiter. 3 and a black, 3/3. Creature Zombie Cleric. Boast. 3 and a black. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Yeah, so clearly just a limited card. But not a terrible one. A bad Gravedigger? No. I wouldn't call Recruiter a bad Gravedigger. Because it might be much better. Like if you ever recur multiple things. And then a 3/3 is larger than a 2/2. It is very expensive though, huh? Spending 4 mana each time. 4 mana is a lot. Didn't we see something similar to this, but it was like 2 and a black? Or was that an uncommon? It was like a 2 mana 2/3 that came into play tapped. And then when you attacked, you'd spend like 3 mana. That was an uncommon though. This is like value attached to Hill Giant. And every time I see value attached to Hill Giant, I'm like, yeah, that's solid. Yeah, whenever it attacks, you may pay 2 and a black. Which is pretty much Boast's ability, right? Activate only if it attacked. Equip 4 is so much. Yeah, but the... So when you're evaluating all of these equipments, you shouldn't be looking at it as a typical equipment. You should be first and foremost evaluating it as a just like a creature. Like what do you get when you pay the extra bit? So with Draugr's Helm, you're going 1 and a black. And it is a battlefield, you can pay 3, so you're spending 5 mana and you get a 2/2. But it's not just a 2/2, right? Because it gives it +2/+2 and Menace. So you're spending 5 mana for a 4/4 with Menace, which is solid. All the uncommon equipment that I've seen that come with a creature body have been super solid, have had super good rates. And this one's actually better than a lot of them because the equipment that it leaves behind gives you +2/+2 and Menace. And +2/+2 and Menace is way better than, like, say, +0/+1 and Situational Hexproof, which is what the blue one gives you. And both of them are spitting out, like, 4/4s for 5 mana. So I actually think this one's one of the better ones. If you have 5 mana to make a 4/4 Menace, then after that trades off, you certainly have 4 mana to give something +2/+2 and Menace. Equip 4, though. Are you thinking about this for Constructed? This card is very, very clearly good and limited, and I'm not scared of the Equip 4 at all. Just saying Equip 4, though, over and over is not a... You're not slowing me down. This card's great. Possibly the best of this cycle. If you have 5 mana to make... Again, if you have 5 mana to make the 4/4 originally, then you certainly have the 4 mana to equip to throw this on something else. The art? Yeah, the art's amazing. Usually when you have, like, a flat perspective from the side like this, like a stoic effect, like a... I don't know. Like it's not a very like dynamic angle, but the amount of detail, going on there, and then the way that the markings on the side of the helmet are glowing and the eyes are glowing from the darkness. I don't know. It's sweet. It's still very evocative. And even though you have like a flat angle for the perspective, the way that like the strands curl over the shoulder make the image like pop. It makes it like very 3D. And all of the rendering on the helmet patterns make it all like very three-dimensional as well too. Really cool art. Yeah, that's interesting, Air. Your art teacher would say finish the background. Yeah, sort of. So you could have that criticism where there's like not a lot going on in the background, but on the other hand, this piece of art is like showing off a helm, and it's not like, it's not a piece of art that's like this huge thing going on a wall where people can be like, oh well, I mean there could be something more interesting going on in the background. This is a piece of art that's getting shrunk down onto like a tiny card, and so it has to like, you have to like kind of recognize it across the board from the game table. So, yeah. No, I think it works here. The muted background makes the foreground pop. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can have a muted background that still has more detail in it. Like the Dread Rider, for example, has like a very subtle background, but there's still detail there. But in the case of Draugr's helm, I'm glad that the artist put that much time. I'm glad that they focused their efforts in all the detail on the card instead of putting something that I don't care about in the background. I think it works really well for this card, especially. The setting doesn't matter because it's just an item, right? It's just a thing. Like think about like the random signets, like the random signet art you've seen that's just like a circle with that set's insignia on it or whatever, and how much more detail. And anyway, we can move on to the next card. You get me talking about, you get me going too deep on art. I'm just gonna be stuck there. Dread Rider, 5 and a black for a 3/7. Creature Spirit Knight, 1 and a black, exile a creature card from your graveyard. Your opponent loses 3. Yeah, kind of wonky, right? 6-mana 3/7. It is a common, so like you don't want your 6-drops, your 6-mana common cards to just completely win the game on their own. I do like if you have to keep your 3/7 back on defense, which those are defensive stats. It's at least like ending the game. Like you can block and then drain, hit the opponent. This card will kill people on its own, right? If you're playing it down in the super late game, it gums up the board, drains the opponent at the same time. Obviously, you can only put so many 6-drops in your deck, though. Dream Devourer, 1 in a black, creature Demon Cleric. It's rare. Each non-land card in your hand without foretell has foretell. Its foretell cost is equal to its mana cost reduced by 2. And then whenever you foretell a card, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Okay, so what does it mean by whenever you foretell a card? Is that when you cast it, or is that when you exile it for 2? Or is it both? Can you cast the cards if it dies? Yes. Foretelling is the exile part? Okay, cool. So on turn 4, you could attack as a 4/3 if you're just foretelling. Yeah. I don't think this card is good. Foretell is like a tempo negative play. And this card can like only attack. This card only gets power when you foretell a card. Yeah, I think this card's a trap. but I'd happy to be proven wrong. There is no downside. Hey, you got your 2-mana O3. What else could you want? This would be better as a 1-drop. I think this would start to be interesting as a 1-drop, yeah, because then you could play it on turn 1. Turn 2 foretell a card, which is the first turn that you might want to start foretelling things. Get in for 2. Even then, I'm not sure if I'd be excited to play it. You're saying there's no way to cheat foretell. There's the one card that makes foretelling cost 1 less. So if you're doing like a blue-black foretell deck, then your 4-drop could interact with your 2-drop, I guess. And you could trigger it multiple times in a turn. That's the other thing, is like you run out of cards, right? Like there's the foretell card that draws more cards, and so like maybe you can chain foretell cards together, but yeah, in general I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, because they meant cheating, like get disqualified. Oh, I thought they were meaning like cheating on the costs. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, because the foretell is always 2 mana. You can't really cheat on it, no. You have to flip them all up at the... Do you have to flip them all up? Do you have to reveal, kind of like with Morph, do you have to reveal at the end? You have to keep track of what mana to spend. Well, with this, it's always 2 less. If it doesn't have the foretell cost printed on the card, it's always going to be 2 less. Is it always 2 less? No, it's not with this one. So what if you foretell a card that has foretell normally, and you have a Dream Devourer out? Do you have to like state what you're doing? Oh, it only impacts non-foretell cards. Yeah, fair enough. This says each non-land card in your hand has, without foretell, is foretell its foretell costs, so it's only referring to cards that it's gifting the foretell ability to. Cool. So you don't get to pick. Your normal foretell cards are just going to be normal foretell cards. This one will always be 2 and then 1 in a blue. Turn 4 Muxus. I mean, you can play a turn 4 Muxus normally, and you don't have to put demons in your deck. Does it work with Ancestral Visions? Well, that's an interesting question. Sort of. You're saying you're pretty sure that it doesn't? Chat split. Well, it's kind of a niche thing. We can move on for now. Dusk Wielder, 1 black, 1/2. It doesn't work, it's the same deal with flashback on them. Okay, because you're not like cheating on the casting cost, you still have to like cast it. Alright, well anyway. Yeah, that makes sense to me that it wouldn't work. Dusk Wielder, 1 black for a 1/2 Elf Berserker, boast 1, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This card seems pretty rancid to me. You're playing it if you're like really aggressive and you care about the tribes, the tribe elements that are on it. But most 1-drops are just not going to be very good and limited. We've seen the 1-mana 1/1 that just like drains every time it gets tapped. Night Guard or whatever. We've seen that one see some constructed play. And I've certainly played the 1-mana 1/1 Vampire back in the Vampire aggro back in Standard. That would attack and make the opponent lose 1. That said, that's not what this is. That's not what Boast 1 is, right? It's not a free trigger. You have to spend a mana every time you want to drain the opponent with this. So you're playing this hyper aggro deck that's trying to curve out, and then if you actually want your card to deal damage, you have to pay mana. It's rough. Some rough beans. Not smooth beans, very rough beans. Pulse tracker, yeah, pulse tracker. Egon, God of Death. 2 in the black. Legendary creature, God. Death Touch. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile 2 cards from your graveyard. If you can't, sacrifice Egon and draw a card. That's a 6/6. So you're not going to be playing this on turn 3 very often and expecting to have it live. In which case you're playing like 3 mana for a delayed draw card. It's not super impressive. And then Throne of Death is 1 black for legendary artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, mill a card. 3 mana, exile a creature card from your graveyard, draw a card. Maybe I'm spoiled by Castle, by the Black Castle, but I'm used to just like being able to spend 3 mana and draw a card without investing a card anymore. I don't think this card's good. It's like a worse Jotun Grunt, the ability, because you can't hit the opponent. It's certainly better when it dies, like you have to draw a card or whatever. It crews the plow. Alright. You think this card seems great in multicolored midrange? How early are you going to have enough cards in your graveyard where playing this is worthwhile? How many times do you need to attack with it? I feel like I want to attack with my creatures more than once to be worth putting them in my deck, but that's just me. I do both Scary Meerkat, both constructed and limited. Usually when I'm talking about rares and mythics, I'm talking about their constructed potential. And usually when I'm talking about commons and uncommons, I'm talking about their limited potential. And if I'm switching it up, if I'm talking about limited or constructed, I'll clarify, right? But I don't need to tell you that just like the Dread Rider is like a 0 in constructed. Like you already know that. I don't need to. Alright, Elderfang Disciple. 1 in the black for a 1/1. When an Elderfang Disciple enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. Creature Elf Cleric. This card's sweet. It's as sweet as a Burglar Rats could be, right? Because now we have relevant creature types on it. Yeah, Burglar Rat effects have seen more standard play than I would have expected recently. With like Yorion Blink decks and such. And now Elf is a relevant tribe, potentially. Relevant constructed tribe. If you're playing this card in Limited, you probably still want to play it when you care about the creature type, because a 1/1 body is not very good. A 1/1 body is not amazing. Note that when you are on the draw, this sort of discard where your opponent chooses becomes better. And it's still value when you're on the play, but it's much, much less good because they get to start with an extra card. They have more options for the discard. You're getting a worse card on average when you play this on the play. And the downside of investing a card and having like a 1/1 out of it is worse too. Eradicator Valkyrie, 2 black, creature angel berserker, flying lifelink hexproof from planeswalkers. And then the boast is 1 in a black, sack a creature. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. So this card's really good at chewing through planeswalkers. The hexproof from walkers doesn't just get like answered by them. Yeah, right after Teferi's gone. Flying in lifelink is also like pretty good against aggro. I guess my issue with this as a planeswalker killer is that you have to wait a turn, so they're still getting value off their planeswalker by activating it. And then if they're a control deck, they probably don't care about your 4 mana 4/3 that takes a turn to attack. It's probably like actually not a very good threat against them. So I think if you're playing this, you're playing it for the boast effect. Even then, just like taking a full turn before you can do it is a little rough. Yeah, we'll see. Putting this in the... I'm not super hopeful about, but I'll be happy if it's good enough, I guess is what I'm getting at. You can attack them and sack a shitter to kill a Planeswalker? Okay. But what I'm getting at is you play your 4-mana 4/3, and your control opponent doesn't care. Because this is the turn they're going to play a sweeper. They've certainly had enough time to find an answer to this card by the time you're playing it. And meanwhile, their Planeswalker is still chugging along. It needed haste is what I'm getting at. Rankle's so much better. Right, it's hard to compare this to Rankle and still be excited about playing Eradicator Valkyrie. You almost have to want the lifelink, huh? Angel Synergy? Yeah, there's Angel Synergy, there's Berserker Synergy. Maybe you like care enough about the tribes. Even if you're doing a tribal thing though, the more expensive the card is, the more it kind of has to do. I don't want my black 4-drop to like only work if I have enough other stuff also working. Although the boast is kind of synergistic. The boast seems like it doesn't fit in an angel deck, but could work in a berserker deck. Someone thought it needed to be mythic. I mean, mythics aren't mythic because they're like the best card ever, you know? Every mythic is not necessarily the best card in the set. I'm actually glad it's a mythic, just so that there are fewer giant flying, life-linking flyers in the limited format. I would have made it a mythic too. Even if it doesn't end up being good, that's not really the point. Feed the Serpent, 2 black instant, exile target creature or planeswalker. This is a sweet card to have at common. Nice one to have around. Be able to answer your opponent's like sicko bomb and limited, and not just die to it. Grim Draugr, 2 black, snow creature, zombie berserker, 1 in a snow, gets +1/+1, menace until end of turn. So 3/2. Yeah, I mean it's solid if you're doing the snow thing, right? Earlier someone was pointing out how the flat framing works pretty well with Draugr cards. And you're kind of getting a little bit of that right here too, huh? With just like just the side perspective. It does kind of work. Enhances the deadness, maybe. Hailstorm Valkyrie, 3 black, snow creature, angel wizard. Flying trample, and then for double snow it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It's a 2/2. So this card could really pop off. A lot of the snow effects like this, if you get like a stupid amount of snow lands in your deck, just become real nutty cards.
Oh shit, what up?
Hey JC, thanks for the 26 months. Appreciate you. Shade effect, yeah. If you can't activate it at all, you have a 4-mana 2/2 flyer, which is below curve for sure. But I don't think it's that below curve. Like, I don't think it's like game-losingly bad if you only have a 4-mana 2/2 flyer. But obviously you want to be able to activate this fairly consistently. And if you activate it multiple times in a turn, you're probably winning the game, right? You don't need to hit very many times with a 6/6 flyer trample. Haunting Voyage. 4 black sorcery. Choose a creature type, return up to 2 target creature types. I'm sorry, return up to 2 creature types of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was foretold, return all creature cards of that type from your graveyard to the battlefield instead. Mythic. Yeah, this is another EDH playable. Every time I see a card like this, I can't help but compare it to Patriarch's Bidding, right? And this is just so much more expensive. Your opponent doesn't get their stuff back too, but the thing with Patriarch's Bidding was, like, your cards were just going to kill them, so it didn't really matter. Yeah, 7 mana just seems like way too much, right? In this our year of 2021, our year of power creep. I'm gonna add this to the EDH playable stack and move on here. Recurring 2 cards in limited, which is probably what you're doing with this, is fine. It's fine, but not a bomb, I don't think. And it's all gonna depend on what you're recurring. It's a lot of mana. Infernal Pet, 2 and a black, creature imp. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, put a 1/1 counter on Infernal Pet. Then it gains flying until end of turn. This is cool. It's a little bit less high variance than the 2 mana 1/1. The 2 mana 1/1 that gets 2 counters and menace. Because this one isn't. It's less Sacred Swim, right? Because 3 mana for a 2/2 is a lot better than 2 mana for a 1/1. But then you're only getting 1 counter, so the ceiling's a lot less high too. They're obviously going to go well in the same deck, Infernal Pet and the 2 mana 1/1 that does something similar. And then you just play like a lot of 1-drops, so you can consistently trigger them the turn after you play them. A lot of efficient cards. I think it's good. I think it's good. Triggered it a couple of times, then you're getting the evasive hits in, and then after you've triggered it a couple times, now you have a 4/4, right? Obviously not an early pick, you're not taking this one super early. You're just hoping to wheel it in the right deck. Jarl of the Forsaken, 3 to black for a flash zombie cleric. 3/2, when Jarl of the Forsaken enters the battlefield, destroy target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls that was dealt damage this turn. Foretell, 1 to black. Yeah, the flash means that you're able to do it on the opponent's turn. This card's fine. Reminds me of like literally every other common we've seen of this, you know, but it's got the set mechanic on it. Solid card is solid. Carfell Kennelmaster, 4 to black. Creature zombie berserker. When there's the battlefield, up to 2 target creatures get +1/+0 and gain indestructible till end of turn. It's a 4/4 in and of itself. 5 mana for a 4/4 is okay. And this one's like helping you attack. If you have a lot of mana, it's helping you attack, and then also like pay your boast costs, right? So a lot of your boast creatures, if you have to attack to get the boast trigger to be able to activate your boast cards. But then a lot of them are small enough that the opponent would be able to eat them. Something like Kennelmaster, if you have enough mana, you can play this, attack with your boast creature, and then also activate your boast creature, and then your opponent doesn't get to eat it. So the creature's around to activate again the turn after. Kind of cool. Mostly you're just going to be playing this on turn 5 and getting a nice attack in that you wouldn't be able to attack in otherwise. Zombie Berserker. That's kind of cool too. Koma's Faithful, 2 to black for a 3/1 lifelink. When Koma's Faithful dies, each player mills 3 cards. I guess that's okay. Just dying in combat to, like, fucking anything. But you get a bit of life out of the deal. Each player milling 3 is kind of interesting. I haven't seen a ton to take advantage of it, but a little bit. Poison the Cup, 1 black, instant, destroy target creature. If the spell was Foretold, scry 2. Foretell, 1 in the black, during your turn you may pay 2. Well, we know what Foretell is at this point. Yeah, removal's always good. Getting a scry 2 on your removal, as well as the option of splitting up the cost a bit, is pretty sweet too. This is a pretty happy first pick, and good enough for Constructed too. Especially if you're doing other Foretell stuff. Nice little murder. Yeah, it's a nice little murder. Tasty, tasty murder. Alright, next card. Priest of the Haunted Edge, 1 to black, Snow Creature, Zombie Cleric. Tap, sack Priest of the Haunted Edge. Target creature gets -X, where X is the number of snowlands you control. Activate this ability only anytime you can cast a sorcery. I like this art too. This card's cool. This card's good. It's you're gonna play it in decks that either you don't really care that much what your cards are, so long as they're snow cards, and then you're just like happy to have another snow thing. Or you're gonna play it in decks that like want the 0/4, and then the ability is just gravy. The ability is like pretty gravy either way, and the ability's not bad. You're probably not sacrificing it super early on unless your opponent's got some evasive threat or some card advantage generating creature that you can kill, because it's going to be hard for the minus X to be anything too large, right? Early on in a game of limited. I don't think this card's good enough for constructed snow stuff. Raise the Draugr, 1 in a black instant. Choose 1. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, or 2 target creature cards that share a creature type from your graveyard to your hand. So you want to get value out of this card, and all of the like tribal cards. The changelings start to get pretty interesting, because then you can rebuy a changeling and any other card, right? Get that value. Yeah, Raise Dead's always fine. It's like never super exciting, but if you can get 2 cards, it starts to get a little bit better. Return Upon the Tide, 4 in a black. Sorcery, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield if it's an elf. Create 2 1/1 green elf warrior creature tokens. And then it's got Foretell here.
Oh shit, what up?
Hey, Sliggett, thanks for the sub. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, 5 mana to reanimate something is kind of medium. It's pretty normal. It's only your graveyard too. You can't like take the opponent's best thing in their graveyard. It's a little bit more exciting if you're getting the elf value, but then the card that you're recurring is an elf. Is it even worth 5 mana to recur an elf? And then the Foretell isn't like a super discount off the regular rate. I guess what I'm getting at is that I wouldn't pick this card very highly. I would play it in most of my sealed decks, I think, that were playing black anyway. Not all of them, but in most of them. And then I would need to have a very specific draft deck before this card interested me. Rise of the Dread Marn, 2 in a black instant. Create X 2/2. I'm gonna skip a lot of these monster cat tracks.
Oh shit, what up?
Get a little bit more chill here. A little easier to talk over. Hey Gengar, thanks for the sub. Alright, Rise of the Dread Marn. You get X 2/2 black zombie berserker creature tokens, where X is the number of non-token creatures that died this turn. Instant. I do not think this card is good in constructed. I think it's a little wonky. I'm reminded of the elf, the 2 in a green elf, where you'd get like 2/2 bears for each card that died. Was that all creatures or just yours? It's a little bit better that it's both players in case you're like trading. You're calling any EDH playable? That's kind of what it feels like to me. In Aristocrat's Payoff. Sort of. I mean, you're sacrificing your things, and then you just get cards that are like maybe slightly better than the cards you sacrificed. Caller of the Claw is your graveyard. Okay, so this is slightly better than Caller of the Claw. I mean, you don't get the base 2/2 though, but then you're also like getting a 2/2 for the opponent's stuff. And then it says non-token, so it doesn't work very well with other copies of itself. You don't tend to have that much extra mana after a sweeper. That's true. I mean, the Foretell kind of works with that. So you like spend like 4 or 5 mana on a sweeper, then 1 mana to Foretell and get some 2/2s. Could be okay. The issue with cards like this is that they're situational. You don't always have like a pile of creatures. You're not always getting your value out of the card. And sometimes you have to do too much work, and then by the time you actually get the payoff and you get your like 3/2/2s or whatever the fuck you're getting, then you're at a stage in the game where that amount isn't impressive anymore. They aren't sweeping if you spent a turn for telling. Yeah. Yeah, rough beans, huh? It's not that this card is like never gonna win any games. It's that like it's gonna be bad too much, a little too often. It's gonna be a little too hard to get value out of a little too often to be consistently good enough to make it into your constructed deck, I feel. Maybe you're doing like Zombie or Berserker Tribal, and you board this in against an opponent that has sweepers, and you just like hold it up on the turn that they sweeper, and sack out and get to keep your army. Maybe. Still rough stuff. I'd rather just have a discard spell. Just have a discard spell for their fucking sweeper. Rune of Mortality. 1 in a black enchantment or a rune. Enchant permanent. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. As long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it has death touch. As long as enchanted permanent is an equipment, as equipped creature has death touch. I feel like death touch is a really good limited mechanic. And so this might be like one of the better limited runes. Like you could put this on an equipment that gives first strike or something. Could be real nasty. All the auras saying draw a card on them makes them all like kind of free too. Pretty sweet. You like that you can cycle these on lands? Yeah, if you don't have like any target at all. Someone else pointed out that they're decent to put on vehicles. Normally, if you were going to put an aura on a vehicle, it would fall off at end of turn, but because they're enchant permanent, it works better. In creature lands, yeah, exactly. Alright, Skimfar Avenger, 1 in a black, creature elf berserker. Whenever another non-token elf or berserker you control dies, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Yeah, this card's good. Obviously, you have to care about the tribal types. But it makes trading and removal worse against you in general. That's a sweet one. Very dynamic pose. Fits the Berserker two-handed wheeling setting really well. Nice sense of movement. Look at the warp and the hammer, because it's so heavy and being swung so fast. Skemfar, Shadow Sage, 3 in a black, creature elf cleric. When enters the battlefield, choose 1. This is the Skemfar Avenger is the sort of card that like could end up being a constructed role player and just like not that impressive in limited. It'll never be bad, you know, 2 mana for a 3/1's never bad in limited. But that might be like all it is in your limited deck. Whereas in constructed, you're always going to be playing it when you know the ability is strong. Anyway, Skemfar, Shadow Sage, 3 in a black, creature elf cleric. When enters the battlefield, choose 1. Each opponent loses X life, where X is the greatest number of creatures you control that have a creature type in common, or you gain X life, where X is the greatest number of creature type in common. It's a 4 mana for a 2/5. This card's interesting. It reminds me of the elf that would drain for the number of elves you had. The 1 black-green 3/3. Shaman of the Pack, yeah. Or maybe it's a 3/2. Anyway, this card is a little bit worse than that card because it costs 4. And the part that you cared about... The part that you cared about with Shaman was the drain part. So having the versatility to gain life instead of just marking, while useful, it's not as good as being a 3 mana finisher. As well as a Coco hit, right? Shaman was in the Coco format. 4 mana might be too much. You can also play this in like not elf or cleric tribal. You could just play this in like your goblin deck, I guess. I don't know. This could be your cobbled finisher. Hey, Rude Paula, thanks for the sub there. Thanks for the 37 months. 2/5 body. Yeah, I don't know how much the 2/5 body matters. Like, I would much rather this was a 3 mana 3/3 than a 4 mana 2/5, right? I do wish that less god. I wish that a lot, actually. They Kaldheim was a block and not a single set. Oh well. The trade-off is that we're no longer stuck in blocks that are less interesting if a block doesn't interest you as much. Skull Raid, 3 and a black sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards. If fewer than 2 cards were discarded this way, you draw cards equal to the difference, and it's got Foretell. Yeah, so I feel like Foretell is thrown on here just because it's the mechanic of the set. Which is fairly normal. I think this card's good. One of the downsides of discard is that, like, when your opponent's hellbent, your cards don't do anything. And so this fixes that. You can, like, get their last card and then draw a card. Instead of being sad that you're only getting 1 card with a Mind Rot. I think if this was 3 mana, it'd be, like, actively good. And at 4 mana, it's, like, good with the question mark. It turns into a draw 2 if they have no cards. Yeah, I mean, 4 mana draw 2 isn't like, bad, but it's not good either. That's kind of where Skull Raid is at. Never gonna be terrible. Never gonna be amazing. I think it's generally better to get your opponent's last 2 cards than it is to draw 2. But it's better to draw 2 than to get, like, 2 irrelevant cards or just get 1 card. Tergrid, God of Fright. 3 black, legendary creature, God. Menace. When an opponent sacrifices an untoken permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto a battlefield under your control. Sweet. 5 mana, 4/5 Menace. Tergrid's Lantern, 3 and a black legendary artifact. Target player loses 3 life. Unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. 4 mana to untap. Oh man. So if you have infinite mana, we've got ourselves a win condition. If you have all of the mana in the goddamn world, you just get to win with this card. Is this silly and constructed with Thoughtseize? Well, I mean, it costs 5 mana. I don't think this card's seeing played with in a Thoughtseize format. Card is so nuts. I mean, the card is powerful. Do we think the Lantern side is better than Tergrid? You're also not playing Thoughtseize on turn 6. Yeah, not usually. Maybe if you have a Liliana in play, and then you somehow resolve your 5-drop, you get to untap with your Liliana, and yeah, it's tough. 4/5 Menace is good for 5 mana. Not for most formats. A little slow for most formats. but powerful enough to be like worth thinking about for standard, even if it's more likely to not end up being good enough. You think this plays well with a Rankle deck? I can see that. You think the Lantern side is mostly relevant for limited? I think the Lantern side might be better than Draugr. You do only have to get like one thing before Draugr becomes worth. Depends on aggro or dirtle. I don't think it does. This side might be too slow against an aggro opponent. But if you're playing like a sealed match where your opponent has like infinite removal for a random 4/5, and they might just like die to you just activating Lantern every turn. Yeah, both sides together certainly work very, very well. This might be one of those flip cards that you end up playing 4 of, just because having both sides is pretty sweet. No, it has to be on a later turn goodie film. How much sack removal do you need to justify the god side? Sack removal or discard, right? And or discard maybe. Like people were talking about Cruxa. The god side certainly plays well with Cruxa. I agree with that. Even though it is expensive. Hey, D-Mills Lead, thanks for the sub, thanks for the 37 months. Yeah, in some formats, I would say that would be like win more. That like if you're attacking with Cruxa and getting it back, that you're like probably ahead enough. But this standard format has been pretty intense, pretty swingy, pretty powerful. Might just be winning, huh? Anyway, interesting card, sweet design. Draugr Shadow, 3 black, instant. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures, and then it has Foretell for 2 black. So the first time I read this, I was like, wow, they made a much worse Barter in Blood, but the fact that it's instant speed is certainly relevant. Could come up for sure.
Oh shit, what up?
Hey, Real Milkman, thanks to the sub, thanks to the 12 months, the full year. Usually Barter is good enough in limited. I've certainly cast it and constructed, though it's been a very long time. So we'll see. We'll see about this one. Valky, God of Lies. A lot of folks excited about this card. 1 of black, legendary creature God. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent reveals their hand. For each opponent, exile a creature card. They reveal this way until Valky leaves the battlefield. And then X, choose a creature card exiled with Valky with converted mana cost X. Comes a copy of that card. And then the flip side is Tibalt. 7 mana. Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter. 5 black, red. Legendary Planeswalker Tibalt. As Tibalt enters the battlefield, you gain an emblem with. You may play cards exiled with Tibalt, Cosmic Imposter. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. +2, exile the top card of each player's library. So again,
Oh shit, what up?
you can play those cards if you hit cards to play. Hey, Kolziak, thanks for the sub. -3, exile target artifact or creature. And again, the passive lets you play that card. And then -8 is exile all cards from all graveyards. And then you can add 3 mana to your mana pool. So the first 2 abilities being a little bit more relevant, but I can see the 8 coming up for sure. Yeah, so a little weak for a 7 mana Planeswalker. Maybe, you know, because it it's no Karn. But if you're not paying 7 mana, if you're playing in a format that doesn't have Karn, then maybe you're just like hungry for a 7 mana Planeswalker in general. And the fact that you can play it for 2 mana is sweet, obviously. It's like Not the most unplayable 2-mana card of all time. Because you might do good things with it. It might be useful. Even though they get the creature back if they kill it. And then, as I'm sure everybody in chat has pointed out, when you cascade into this in older formats, you can choose to play the 7-mana half. Which I'm certainly going to be testing. I'm certainly going to be testing that out in Modern and Legacy. Seems good. I don't know if it'll be enough to bring, like, Modern and Legacy Jund back. The issue is that, like, 2 mana for a 2/1 that only hits creatures is not an amazing card. And certainly not a card that you want multiples gumming up your hand with, right? Because it is Legend. But you also want to run a lot so that you can increase your chance of being able to cascade into the god. So I think this ends up being like a 3 of, but maybe you end up playing 4. And then you're just like unhappy a lot of the time when you draw multiples. Amazing Versuro. Oh, because it exiles? Yeah, that's solid. Next part matters less because it comes copies of that card. Yeah, I guess. It needs to have a hit though, right? Not all of your... in Modern and Legacy, not all of your opponents have creatures. It's something you gotta realize. And then you've got a 2-mana 2/1 blank. Brickety brick. It'll never be that strong in a creature mirror. Because yes, you are taking one of your opponent's things, but if they kill your creature, they get it back, right? So you're not, like, actually taking their thing permanently. You're taking a card, and you're not taking a card that they invested mana into yet. You're taking a card out of their hand, which I think is worse most of the time. Compare it to, like, Banisher Priest in Modern and Legacy, and you kind of see what I'm getting at. It is certainly good if you get to hit one of the opponent's escape cards, for sure. If this becomes a copy of the creature to exiles, it does not lose the they get it back ability. The they get it back ability is tied into the comes into play trigger. And when it says its name, even if it copies something else and like gains the name of something else, when it says its name, it's talking about, like, this card. The name is just a stand-in for saying this card. So I'm pretty sure if you play this, take a card, and then activate this to become a copy of that card, if they kill the Valkyrie, I think they still get the card back. Yeah. Delayed trigger. Green EDH? Sure. Green EDH. And I do think it is constructed playable.
Oh shit, what up?
Oh shit, what up? Hey, Hun, the Spitter. Thanks for the sub. Thanks for the 7 months. What happens if they kill it before the trigger comes off? Well, if it's all combined in one trigger that way, then they just never take anything. If it's all one trigger, then the ability doesn't take anything. If it's 2 separate triggers, if it's an enters the battlefield trigger and a leaves play trigger, and they killed it in response, then it would stay, like, permanently exiled, or if you sacked it with a trigger on the stack or whatever, like Bismarck Fiend. But this is the new wording, so they just wouldn't get anything. If this was more like Hostage Taker, it'd be better. Yeah, the front side, right? Like I said, I don't think the front side's the exciting part. I think you're trying to do business with this 7-mana backside with Cascade and whatnot. If the front side was better, then I'd be more excited about playing 4 in my Jund deck, but that's what I think it's going to end up being a 2 or 3 of. Anyway. Vargoth, Bloodsky Sire, 2 black legendary creature, Demon Rogue, Death Touch, Boast for 1 black. Target player searches their library for a card, then shuffles their library and puts that card on top of it. So this card works really well with Opposition Agent, because then you're like tutoring cards out of the opponent's deck, which is a little bit better than Vamp Tutoring, because if you target yourself with the Boast, then you're putting the card on top of your library. Whereas if you have Opposition Agent and you Boast, then you get like the best card out of their deck, and you can just like play it that turn. Worst Vamp Tutor ever. It's the worst Vamp Tutor ever if you don't care about having a 2/3 Death Touch body. I think I'm going to try out a couple in Mono Black Aggro and Legacy. Try out a few. That deck's desperate for bodies, though. And it's really happy about playing 4 Opposition Agent. So I might want 1 or 2 of this kind. Odds are it'll end up not being good enough, but I'd like to try it. It's a rogue. Yeah, I don't know how much that matters. Like I don't know if Standard Rogues wants this. I haven't played a lot of Standard Rogues though, so I could be wrong. It cannot keep your opponent's mana screwed or flooded. They choose. Its target player searches their library for a card and shuffles the library and puts it on top. The only way you're choosing a card is with Opposition Agent, and with Opposition Agent it exiles the card. So then you would get it. So there's no way to use this to like lock them out. Anyway, Vengeful Reaper, 3 black for a 2/3. Creature, Angel, Cleric, Flying, Death Touch, Haste. Foretell for 1 black. This guy's good. This is not an embarrassing first pick, I don't think. Got a nice set of abilities. Definitely not something you would consider for Constructed, though. Village Rites is a reprint. Some juicy new art. Love it. But yeah, clearly playable, clearly good. In Limited, you're playing this in decks that like have a bunch of cards they don't mind sacrificing, obviously, or you're boarding it in when your opponent has a lot of passivism type effects. So you can cash in on a card that they've already burned a removal spell on and get that sweet, sweet value. And then, of course, it has been a Constructed staple lately in Standard. And Historic, right? Way down. 1 mana sorcery as an additional cost to cast this spell. Exile a creature card from your graveyard. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. So I don't know about this one. I mean, removal's removal. Removal's never that bad. But the more situational the removal spell is, the less I'm excited. I think playing 1 of these is fine. But I wouldn't take it as high as I would taking like a universal removal spell. Not as good as Deadweight. Right, yeah, Deadweight's a sort of card where I'd be happy to play 2 or 3. A lot of times, even when you're not killing a creature with Deadweight, you're still like making a 3/3 flyer into a 1/1. Like you're still like not dying to their thing or whatever. Whereas way down, like you have to have a creature card in your graveyard, and then if you're exiling it to this, you're not like rebuying it with your stuff that might care about graveyard later, and I don't know. There is some self-mill where in a deck that just like has that incidental mill, the card becomes better and better, and maybe in a deck like that, you're happy playing a couple of these. With the average deck, I think you're just playing 1. Maybe on 2 risk averse. With your crown, 1 black enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchant creature has base power 0 and has at the beginning of your upkeep. You lose 1 life unless you sacrifice this creature. Yeah, this card's not great. I'm trying to figure out like how exactly not great it is. Or the situations where I would want to play it. Usually when I have a card that I don't think is very good and limited, I'm thinking about like what kind of deck I would still want to play it in. I'm trying to think of those situations. I think you're just playing this when you have like no removal whatsoever, right? Or if you're like really desperate for playables, and then at least like this trades for a thing. I guess it doesn't even necessarily trade for a thing. Like they want to keep a blocker. Giving your opponent options is bad. And this is kind of the epitome of that. Stab Wound was good because they couldn't sack it. Yeah, Stab Wound also, like, killed some things. Stab Wound was also like a 3-mana deadweight in some situations. And then you're right, it actually, like, it could be a drain effect that could win the game. Wither Crown's only... I think Wither Crown's only good if you're playing just, like, a bunch of shitters. And you want to turn your opponent's sweet blocker. If they're blocking 1/1s anyway, then them losing a life every turn doesn't really matter. I think that's all I can think of, though, for Wither Crown. The only time that I can think of Wither Crown being, like, actively good is if your deck was, like, very aggressive and low to the ground. If you're playing aggressive and chonky creatures, then Wither Crown's bad because it's a removal spell that still lets your opponent chump like your big chonker that you like spent a turn playing and investing your time into. And if you're playing medium creatures, if you're playing a bunch of like 3-mana 3/3s or whatever, or like hill giants, then Wither Crown's bad because you're hitting their best thing. Their best thing is probably still blocking. You know, they'll just like, okay, whatever, pay the life, block your 3/3 with my 0/4 or whatever's going on. So that's like not even a real removal spell. But if you're playing a bunch of 1 and 2 power creatures, if you're like that aggressive, and you don't have actual removal spells, then I guess I could see Wither Crown working. Anyway, we have made it through black. We've made it through black. We are now going on to red.